Hello there. Hello. Good afternoon. In the late 19th century, Tolstoy was walking across the landscape on a very hot day, and he saw a madman in the distance going like this. And he thought, why is it that people are allowed to leave mad people out there in the hot day? Why don't the local village look after him? So anyway, they got nearer, and the man was doing that. And he got nearer, and every time he thought, isn't it terrible that there's nowhere in Mother Russia to help people like this? And then he got very close, and the man was sharpening a scythe. That's the real problem around poverty. That is the real problem about the gap between rich and poor, and the illusory gap between rich and poor. So here I am talking about the illusory gap between rich and poor, and I'm now using slides for the first time. So if I screw it up, please forgive me. Come on then. Where's the next one? Right. Oh, sorry. This is a very interesting slide. I'm just going to throw up some slides to show you about the illusory gap that exists around poverty. 32% of all income that is brought into by the Treasury, that's not the money that they borrow. Last year or the year before, the Treasuries received about £550 billion from the public and borrowed about another 150 billion. A third of that money, almost a third of that money, went to poor people. But it didn't go to poor people in order to get poor people out of poverty. It went to poor people to enable them to stay poor. The vast amount of that money went into Social Security. Now, Social Security is wrongly named. It should be social insecurity, because when you go into Social Security, it is a kind of safety net that's made of concrete. So what happens is that you're in life and something goes wrong, and then you fall into a problem, and boom, you get down and you hit that safety net, and it's made of concrete, and you stay down. That is why under 1% of people from a Social Security background will end up doing higher education. Now, we're very, very happy in the United Kingdom, because the figure used to be that the working class was 5% of the population of universities, and then it grew to about 15 to 17% under the offices of people like Blair and under the offices of people like Brown. That's great. But hidden within that working class, that was a class of people who were working. But lo and behold, left behind was in the region of 4 to 5 million people who were on Social Security and were not filling up our colleges and our universities. They were filling up our prisons. 85% of the population of people in prison come from a Social Security background. Not my figures, the figures of the Home Office. So this figure is an enormous amount of money. So if you take the gap between rich and poor, you have to close it down a bit when you realize that people like me, who when they were young and screwing around and being naughty boys, had thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds spent on them, much more than that was spent on some of the wealthiest people in Britain, was spent trying to sort out the fact that I needed to go to prison and I needed to be reformed. So you've got this kind of weird world that we don't understand, and that is that we spend money on crime, and crime and poverty go together, and we spend money on poverty that doesn't actually get people out of poverty. So a lot of this 32% is simply a band-aid. It's simply pasting over the problem, as the last speaker was talking about. Right. I went to see Mr. Cameron before he became the leader of the Conservative Party. And I said to him, I wonder how much it costs to produce a posh chap like you to run your posh party. And he said, I said, I reckon about £250,000. And he said, well, actually, the family had done how much it cost to produce somebody like Mr. Cameron. And they worked it out at about £250,000. And I said, God, you're cheap. God, you're cheap. Do you know, one big issue vendor is worth 4 of you. Because the average cost of producing a big issue vendor is £1 million. How does that work out? We did a survey just before I went to see Mr. Cameron. They're all interchangeable, by the way, so don't worry. They really are, and I hope you lot wise up. Because don't wait for me to wise up. Anyway, and I said, we'd done this survey. I said, this survey proved that 87% of the people who were selling the big issue one weekend in London, 87% of them came from a social security background at some stage. But they came from broken families, and 87% of them had been in local authority care. Now, I don't know if you know how much local authority care costs, but I assure you, it costs an enormous amount of money, £2,000 or £3,000 a week. So if you've got somebody who's in the system for 10 years, and the average person that's where you get your £1 million from. There was a sex ring broken recently in Rochdale, which I wrote about in the Times because I was so disgusted by the way it was handled. Because there was a business, 3i, I don't know if you know 3i, a wonderful company. They owned hostels, or they owned children's homes where there was one customer for these little houses, the house in a back street in Rochdale, one customer, that was one person. And they charged the state £250,000 a year to look after this little girl, and this little girl was being sex trafficked at the same time. That is the reality. There is a shed load of money to be made out of poverty. And that's our figure. Anyway, all right, where's the next one? Oh, yeah, here we go. What I'm trying to do by telling you the Tolstoy story is say we have to get close. We have to get really close to understand poverty. We have to get really close to understand the gap between rich and poor. Because what we're doing is we're practicing the age-old Judeo-Christian thing, which is go out and find the baddies and go out and capture the goodies. Unfortunately, there don't seem to be enough goodies around at the moment. So we're always moralizing. We always want to know who's the bad guy. And that's great. But the problem is it doesn't change anything. It changes nothing at all. These are not my figures, unfortunately, so if they're all crap, blame somebody else. But the combined wealth of all the wealthiest in the world that occur in those big books produced by the Sunday Times is about £3 trillion. Now, if you consider that that is equal to the amount of all the houses and property in the UK, you can see that it's an enormous amount of money. But this figure here dwarfs that figure. And that figure is all of the pensions that are largely given out in the advanced capitalist countries. And it's your pension, it's your mum's pension, it's your dad's